Hello and welcome to the show. Today we will be talking about the Mexican-American War. Like we know, the Mexican-American War created a huge amount of tension between the US and Mexico. Therefore, we are lucky to have on air with us today someone who is a Mexican soldier who fought bravely in the Mexican-American War, Nicolas Bravo, and is here to tell us more about it. Mr. Bravo will be talking about his experience at war and will give us details on how, in fact, the aggressor of this war was the U.S. Nicholas, you are now on the air.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your show. I am delighted to share my thoughts about this tragic and unfair war.
Well, I'll just jump right into the questions people are waiting for. To begin, how did the war start in the first place, Mr. Bravo?
Well, it all started back in 1836 when Texas unjustly rebelled against us because the U.S. had pressured them into doing it. Therefore, Texas won their independence from our amazing nation, Mexico. Then, about 10 years later, Texas made a terrible choice by joining our enemy, America, becoming the newest state in the U.S.
So, from what you have told us so far, Texas unfairly and surprisingly gained independence from Mexico and later joined the U.S. What happened after that?
Well, the president of the US, James Polk, unsuccessfully tried to bribe Mexico with $25 million so that Mexico would give them California. However, we thought that was very unprofessional of the US, so we denied their selfish offer. The US thought that we were struggling in controlling California, but we knew that that wasn't it. The US only wanted more of our precious land.
I bet President Polk was really angry with the fact that Mexico had denied his offer. Did the US attempt to start a war against Mexico, or did Mexico try and start a war with the US?
The U.S. started to invade our property after the denial of their offer. James Polk had sent troops to occupy the Rio Grande River and the Nueces River, which is part of our property and no one else's. The U.S. crossed our boundaries, so we had no other choice than to kill the 16 Americans who were sent by Polk.
So I believe that the US found that as an excuse to start a war with Mexico?
In matter of fact, yes, President Polk found that as an excuse to start a war. Polk ordered 4,000 men under General Zachary Taylor to march from the Nueces River to the Rio Grande, proactively near Mexican forces, which makes it very clear that the U.S. started all of this.
Did Mexico want to engage in such war with the US?
I mean, we had no other choice than to fight back. We weren't going to let them get to us and make them believe that we were weak. We weren't going to let the U.S. or any other nation invade what is ours.
Were you guys aware of the fact that this would bring lots of tension between Mexico and the US?
Yes, we were aware of the fact that the diplomatic relations between Mexico and the U.S. were going to be completely severed. In fact, the U.S. had so much hatred towards us that they bombed surgical hospitals that didn't pose any military threat towards the U.S. Army in 1847. That is how far the U.S. went just so they could start war with us.
What happened throughout the war with the US? Was Mexico able to defend itself from the aggressors?
Not quite. The U.S. sent 111,000 soldiers into combat because they were afraid we were going to beat them. However, Mexico only sent 60,000 soldiers into combat, which was relatively small. The U.S. outnumbered Mexico by a lot. Therefore, Mexico reported 25,000 deaths, and the U.S. reported 13,000 deaths. Unfortunately, the U.S. defeated us in the Mexican-American War because they had more soldiers and the newest weapons.
Do you believe Mexico would have won the war if they had had more soldiers?
Of course, I believe that not having a lot of soldiers decreased our chance of winning the war. However, I do believe that we did a pretty good job with only a few soldiers.
How did things end up with the US after the war? What changes were made? Did Mexico give them California?
Well, Mexico signed a peace treaty named Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, where we agreed to give the U.S. California, the Oregon Territory, and all territory east of California, and in return the U.S. had to pay Mexico $15 million, which was not enough for everything Mexico gave to them.
Well, I guess there has been enough said. The U.S. was truly the aggressor and Mexico the victim of this tragedy. Once again, thank you, Mr. Bravo, for taking the time to answer our questions.
Thank you for having me and letting me explain the true facts about the Mexican